85% of textiles in this country are thrown in the trash. You can't just take a shirt like this and send it to recycling. You have to take out the buttons. You have to take out the seams. You have to break it down and shred it. There really isn't a well-developed recycling infrastructure for textiles in the country. And in fact, many of the most important technologies are just beginning to emerge. Goodwill has 3,300 stores. We are within 10 miles of 83% of the population, so our footprint is massive. 140,000 employees. We keep about 4.5 billion pounds of materials in circularity. When you look at the volume that we get, we have the opportunity to aggregate material types, work with any number of partners, turn those materials into other goods or just into recyclables.
Okay, I want to welcome everyone back to the Green Hour. We are live at the Concordia Annual Summit during Climate Week, New York City. I'm sitting here with Steve Preston, CEO of Goodwill. Steve, thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me.
Yeah, so I think first question is, can you talk about the scale of Goodwill?
Yeah, well, so Goodwill has 3,300 stores. We are within 10 miles of 83% of the population, so our footprint is massive. 140,000 employees. We keep about 4.5 billion pounds of materials in circularity every year. And underlying all of that, which most people don't realize, but our mission for 125 years has been to help people with deep challenges, deep needs, get skills, get back on their feet, move into the workforce, and find a fundamentally different trajectory in life. So 85% of the people we serve have a high school degree or less. It is a segment of the population for whom relevant job skills can change their lives. Digital skills, increasingly now AI skills, construction trades, healthcare skills. And so we have a massive percentage of our population that has every bit of potential, every bit of promise to not only change their lives, but fill roles with employers who need competitive labor. And we try to be that bridge between helping that individual change their life and helping that employer fill critical roles.
So I'm interested, what's the normal interaction, let's say for a Goodwill store? Let's say I'm coming in, I want to donate clothes.
Yeah.
So I'll come in, do I drop off? How's the whole process work? And then what happens to the clothes after, let's say I leave?
Yeah. So what we have found through any number of surveys, no matter how much people love us or know what we do, the most important thing is convenience.
Yes.
Right. We have to care about people's lives, right? And what motivates them. So we try very hard to make it very convenient to drop off those goods. Typically, the vast majority of stores will have a drop-off section, probably on the side or the back of the store. We also have separate drop-off centers that are conveniently located, which are not attached to a store. So we gather those. Somebody usually goes out and takes them from your car. It immediately goes into a back room where a sortation process happens. Sortation by type of good. Is it clothing? Is it hard goods? Is it something else? Then further sortation into different product categories, and many times different pricing categories. So, your suit would definitely be at the high list end of the list today. But so if it's a very nice brand, it might get priced a little higher. It might be priced at a midpoint, a little bit lower, and then it moves into a retail channel. Now, the vast majority of those goods go into the stores that everybody is familiar with. Some of them may go to online if we think it's more appropriate. Typically, those things, online is most important for goods that will command a higher price for people who really know what they're getting. Collectibles, jewelry, those types of things, although we do a lot of textiles and other things. In addition, if it doesn't sell in a traditional store, it may then go to a by the pound store. And then if it doesn't sell anywhere in that network, we often sell it then to wholesalers who find other uses for it. And in that case, it may go to other stores, but it also may go into the rag trade. It may go into industrial applications, shredded and used in cushions or those types of materials, and then any other application that would be sort of unique in a manufacturing or kind of a down scaling type environment.
I'm also interested in, let's say, the life cycle of the products that are on the shelf. So is there a timeline or let's say timetable that clothing will stay on the shelf in a Goodwill store?
Yeah. It varies somewhat by region, but the most common would look like this. It would stay on the shelves for about 3 weeks. Then in the fourth week, what many stores will do is offer them half price. And if they don't sell in those 4 weeks, then it would typically go to a by the pound store. When we look at the sell through, the vast majority of sales happen in the first or second week. And that's because we have very savvy shoppers.
Yeah.
And we have people that come to the store a lot and they find those goods. And another thing I'd mention is an important segment of our shopper base is resellers. And there are a lot of people who supplement their income by finding good deals and reselling them online. And they are a very important constituent for us because not only do they keep those goods in circularity, but they're using those goods to help them manage their own lives. And like I said, it's typically sort of supplemental income, but for those people, that supplemental income can really make an enormous difference in their lives.
To your point, when we look at the waste hierarchy, reuse is the best case.
For sure.
So in that case, it's the best environmental method. I do want to get into this concept of circularity and the circular economy a little bit. And the note that I have down is at Goodwill's first sustainability summit, you unveiled textile circularity pilots and traceability initiatives. What were the vision behind these and how do they redefine Goodwill's role in the textile ecosystem?
Think of it in terms of two ways. Number one is think about bringing more textiles into the circularity system. And once they're in the system, think about making sure that every item finds its best home from a circularity perspective. So this is what that sounds like. 85% of textiles in this country are thrown in the trash and end up in a landfill. And and about 15% are either donated or primarily donated, some incinerated. It is really, there's a huge opportunity for us to work with consumers, municipalities, waste haulers, community organizations to both raise consciousness and simplify people's ability to donate those goods. So, I mean, when you think about that, going from roughly 15% of goods to 100% of goods would multiply the amount of goods in circularity significantly. So a lot of our work on the piloting side is to look at bringing more of those goods into circularity. Once they come into circularity, you can imagine that a lot of those goods that are thrown away may not be resellable, right? You know, I love that t-shirt I've had for 20 years with a couple of holes in it. But you know, if it ends up on the shelf, somebody else isn't going to necessarily love it. And we would like to be the destination for those items as well. And ultimately, we need to be able to have a home for those goods, right? So then you think about the other side, which is what happens downstream. Downstream, you know, I already mentioned, you know, the store network, you know, the rag trade, shredding them for manufacturing settings. The next big thing is really recycling. Now, there really isn't a well-developed recycling infrastructure for textiles in the country. And in fact, many of the most important technologies are just beginning to emerge. So, you know, a cotton shirt, you can beat it down, you can turn it back into fibers, and you might have one or two turns before the fibers are worthless. And it's challenging, it's expensive, et cetera, et cetera. What we're seeing now is a number of technologies emerging that will take textile clothing and turn it back into, through a multi-chain process, into polyfibers, into polyfabrics, and back into clothing. And so we are in an MOU right now with a company called Reju, which we think is probably the strongest of the emerging technologies, to potentially work with them as they site facilities in the U.S. But we're also in relationships with everyone. So we want to make sure that we're providing feedstock to whomever, builds a facility. And to some degree, right out of the gates, I think there's going to be a little bit of a land grab, because if you have a major facility in one part of the country and you've locked up, the feedstock stream, it may be some time before there's enough capacity for another one. So we want to be there when they do that. I should also note that we're in an MOU with Waste Management, which is now called WM, and we are actually piloting curbside pickup with them in 2 markets. And many of those goods come to us. We sort out the goods that can be kept in circularity. We give it back to them, and then they sort those out, and they're testing fiber sortation, which would ultimately potentially support recycling as well.
Yeah, it's interesting. A few months back, I was at the plastic recycling conference in Washington, D.C.
Yeah.
And I sat on a panel or I was sitting in the crowd of a panel, and it was Goodwill, WM Waste Management, and Reju.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking, how
Those are
cool
our
is this?
friends. Those are our
Exactly. Yeah.
friends.
I was like, how cool is this system that they're working with, all these groups coming together? And then when I saw you were speaking, I was like, we've got to talk to him on the podcast.
Well, it's interesting because the MOU is 3 ways. It's all 3 of us coming together. It's interesting that you were in Washington, D.C., because beyond textiles, we're doing a lot of work in recycling across different material types. And in Washington, D.C., and in that region, we're actually turning plastic bags into decking materials through a partnership with a manufacturer. So when you look at the volume that we get, we have the opportunity to aggregate material types, work with any number of partners to turn those materials into other goods or just into recyclables.
So when you think of, to your point, creating this closed loop system, let's say you do it with a chemical recycler with this MOU, will Goodwill stores actually be the sortation center, let's say by fiber type, or would that be someone like Waste Management?
So that's yet to be seen. We certainly have the ability to do that, and we are, we have relationships with all of the manufacturers and developers of the technologies that will enable it. But today, there are technologies that are available that will actually provide high volume sortation by fiber type, and then and once you have that sortation completed, you can't just take a shirt like this and send it to recycling. You have to take out the buttons. You have to take out the seams. You have to break it down and shred it. So there are systems available that move materials at a high speed for fiber sortation, and then immediately move them into the deconstruction process and turn it into feedstock that's available for recyclers. Those are sort of emerging technologies, but they are available on the market today. So if we do that, we would need to invest in large centers where we would aggregate goods from all of those local places where you're dropping off your clothes, aggregate them into large central sortation facilities, and then feed that to recyclers.
So one question I would ask is, in my day-to-day job, what we're seeing, because I work in circularity, extended producer responsibility,
Yes.
EPR legislation coming into play and kind of forcing the hand of manufacturers or producers to recycle product to product, right? Closed loop systems. And this just hit me thinking about Goodwill.
Yeah.
If EPR kind of hit in certain states, would Goodwill be responsible for, let's say, the EPR legislation, or would that be the producer of the actual product?
Yeah, great question. So the first state out of the gates here is California with SB 707. In that case, the producers have the responsibility, but they are the way that whole law is designed is there is what they call a PRO, which is sort of the organization that, for lack of a better word, sort of organizes the whole process. And we would hope to be downstream from that, accepting those goods, because those producers need to have a home for those. We want to be a home for those goods. And if, based on what I said before, if we can be the home for all goods, so that we can once again make sure that everything we good gets to the best place for that good, we think we can play an absolutely essential role in closing the entire circularity loop. And right now, the legislation is obviously passed. There's a number of years before it's going to be implemented, but we really kind of see that as an important test case as California works through the mechanisms and the design and the partnerships to make that a reality. But we want to be in the middle of that. Now, the other thing I would say is, Europe is really leading the way on this already. And that's good news for us because we can see what happens over there and adapt sort of their learnings and best practices over here. Europe, in many countries, we're already seeing a ban on textile waste. We're already seeing a ban on exports of resold goods unless they're really resellable in other countries. So what we're seeing in Europe is a potential, significant growth in unresellable goods coming into that market. And so there's a tremendous amount of energy right now and, governmental support to begin building out the capabilities to be able to recycle those goods. So we're keeping a close eye there. I've been over there personally to look at the technologies, to talk to people who are in the middle of this space, and really look forward to seeing how we can apply those best learnings over here.
Yeah, it's interesting. And sustainability, it's like Europe usually leads. California's the first state in the U.S. to adopt, and then it kind of trickles down after that. So what we've seen too is these chemical recycler startups that are promising, a lot of them are in Europe. So it's trying to figure out, will they come to the U.S.? Will they open up shop here? But yeah, definitely Europe is kind of the leader in sustainability.
Yeah, and I think it's important to note there's also a tremendous amount of governmental support, which means dollars to get those facilities built, dollars to fund investment. And so that is definitely an accelerant to making, things happen.
So last question I'll ask, we talked about the private sector, right? WM and then Reju, this company with the MOU. What role do governments play with this work too? Does Goodwill work with governments in any kind of fashion, let's say in this world of circularity?
Yeah, increasingly. We have a long history of working with governments on the workforce development side. So we have sort of the mechanisms and the relationships in place to expand into circularity. We are very close to what's happening on the governmental side in California right now with all the players there. We spend a lot of time understanding what's happening at the state level and how to engage productively. So, we're already seeing activity in Massachusetts, in New York, and a couple of other states, which are maybe a little bit further behind. And so that's going to be absolutely essential because, I spent part of my career in the federal government. And what I can tell you from having been on the other side as well is legislators, policymakers really are looking for input from industry, looking for input of the people that are going to end up owning these solutions to understand how best to design them. So those relationships are critical. And I think people on both sides of that table want those relationships to be effective. I think sometimes we think, oh gosh, if we're going to go to, governmental players, they're going to see us coming and it's going to be an issue. I actually think it's quite different. It's actually help us understand the right way to do this so that when we launch a solution, it works and all of the players in the ecosystem can perform well to achieve the end state that we all envision.
Well, Steve, I'll have to say next time I go into a Goodwill, I'll definitely look at the shelves and then understand what's going to happen next to this clothing that's there. So we can't thank you enough for coming on to the Green Hour today.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yes.